What up, hosts?
We're back.
Back again. Again. The weirdo's back.
Something's back.
Hope you guys have had a better week than, I have this week of the fact of when we're recording. We're not going to go into it, but it's been a week.
My week's been all right.
Glad you're
It's been quiet for the most part.
Shit. I reached my 13th reason today.
It's funny you said shit before that.
You guys don't get that joke, but it was funny.
Only the real ones get it. Let's see. I think we've pretty much done all of our chit-chatting before we hit record after testing this 1,000 times because I can't figure out the settings to save my life
on these new mics.
But, I don't know what else. What we got going on? What's new?
What's new
and interesting? Not a whole hell of a lot, honestly.
No.
Well, I guess we'll just get on right into it.
Let's do it.
We are into spooky Connecticut this week,
whoop, whoop.
Which I thought it was going to be kind of hard because Connecticut's not a big state. It absolutely was not difficult at all.
Well, I thought that I'd find a lot more than I actually did, being that it is one of
it's like
original,
one of the New England states. Yeah.
But I found some interesting stuff. There's definitely enough that I feel like we could probably finagle another episode out of.
We could definitely do another episode. I'm glad I put deodorant on. My armpits are moist.
But yet we're both sitting here freezing.
Yeah, I'm cold. My first one is the Mark Twain house. So in 1873, Sam and Olivia Clemens hired New York architect Edward Tuckerman Potter to design their Hartford, Connecticut home. Construction began in August of 1873, and though there was still a lot of work left to do, the family moved into the home on September 19th, 1874. The home measures 11,500 square feet and has 25 rooms distributed over 3 floors. The home had cost the couple between $40,000 and $45,000. Can you imagine? You can't get a single wide trailer for that.
Right.
And so once they moved in, they kept the interior quite simple since they'd already spent a fortune on this house. Mark Twain would later call the home the happiest and most productive years of his life. In 1891, financial hardship forced Sam and Livy to move the family to Europe, and they would never return to the Hartford home. They sold it in 1903 as it was too hard for Livy to return after the death of their daughter Susie. The Bissels lived in the home from 1917, and for the 4 years after, they rented the building to the Kingswood School for Boys. In 1922, it was sold to a developer who had plans to immediately turn the house into an apartment building. In 1929, the Friends of Hartford, which was led by Catherine Seymour Day, purchased the home. And in April, a group was chartered called the Mark Twain Memorial and Library Commission. The purpose of this group was to save and restore the home of Mark Twain on Farmington Avenue. I think Daniel's home. I heard a car door. From 1930 to 1956, the organization rented out the first floor of the Mark Twain branch of the Hartford Public Library, and the remainder of the home was rented as apartments until the 1960s. The formal restoration began in 1963, and this was also the year it was designated a National Historic Landmark. Since then, a detached museum has been built and tours of the home are available. But I'll stop boring you with the long, drawn-out histories of these places. It just makes me so happy. Just knowing the history helps to know why some people may not have wanted to leave. The Mark Twain house was already a well-known attraction prior to the crew of ghost hunters arriving. I have smelled cigar smoke in several spots in the house. Not surprising since Twain smoked constantly. up to 40 cigars a day, says Grace
Damn.
Bellinger, assistant manager of interpretation at the Mark Twain House. Today, no smoking is allowed within the home. The lady in white, as well as I don't know that I wrote this quote correctly. Okay, I think I know. I think I left an E off. So the lady in white, as well as one in black, have both made appearances and may have been mentioned, may be mentioned on the. I bumped the thing with my glasses. On the graveyard shift tours, she continued. During the spiritualist movement. I hope this is not setting the tone for the whole night. During the spiritualist movement of the 1800s and the early 1900s, Twain and his family would often attend seances and performances with mediums. After the first appearance on Ghost Hunters, the Mark Twain Museum began to host the graveyard shift tours, which have now become so popular that they do them year-round. Bellinger said, early in the summer of 2010, I spoke with a gentleman named John, who was a non-believer, but was scheduling a family vacation for his wife and sons to visit sites the ghost hunters had investigated. I'm not sure how many they visited, but when John and his family arrived, he was still a non-believer. I was the person scheduled to give the tour he and his family were taking. After the tour was over, John came to me and asked who had been in a section of the house as we were outside before our tour entered the building. I had to tell him no one could have been in the room he was speaking of, as the previous tour was already departing the Mark Twain house as we stood outside, and the room in question is roped off to visitors and staff, though people can look in from the nursery, which is a room that where a lot of activity has been reported. John was insistent he had witnessed a man opening the window. He even made the motions of the way the man was opening the windows. I laughed and said that isn't possible. He was so insistent, and as it was the last tour of the evening, I took him back into the house to show him that the room was not accessible. He left that second visit to the house as a believer. I showed him no one could have been in the room in question, as I showed him that no one could be in the room in question. Twain would often speak of the power of the mind and would tell the story of the death of his younger brother and his own experiences related to that tragic event. Mark Twain's mother would talk about how her son was born in 1835 with Halley's Comet in the night sky. She said that he was born sickly but took the comet as an omen that he would do great things in his lifetime. Halley's Comet was set to return in 1910, and Twain would discuss the return and how he was destined to leave this world as it passed. He died on April 21st, 1910, with Halley's Comet in the night sky.
That's crazy.
Have
you ever read any books by Mark Twain? I feel like we read, like, in school, like, Huckleberry Finn, or maybe The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
I saw a meme the other day, and it said, a teacher asked a group of students if they knew who wrote Tom Sawyer, and a student raised his hand and said, Rush. And, like, whoever posted it was like, he's not wrong.
So, like, I was looking through, the books that he's written, and there are some in here that I would be interested
He wrote A
in
Christmas
reading.
Carol, right?
Oh, did he?
I think, didn't he?
I don't see it.
That might be Charles Dickens.
That is Charles Dickens.
Okay.
But there's one in here called Advice for Good Little Girls. I'd be interested to see what that's about.
It's probably something weird. Look at him. He looks like a crabby old man.
There's one called A Letter from Santa Claus. A lot of his stuff is kind of like, it looks Christian based.
Twain also wrote numerous short stories, most notably the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County.
There's one called Cannibalism in the Cars.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that. Life of the Mississippi, on the Mississippi.
This book seems like it would make me cry. It's called A Dog's Tale.
I think there's a movie based on that.
I don't want to talk about it then, because I've probably seen it and it's going to make me cry.
Yeah, probably.
There was that one movie, and we decided we were going to watch it one night. Movie about, is it A Dog's Life?
I don't know.
A Dog's Purpose. That's the one we watched, I think. And we sat down to watch it, and me and TJ are both just over there boo-hooing.
Aww.
I think that's the one it was. Look, don't talk shit. Don't talk shit.
Me watching, what was I watching the other day? It was one of the videos of, like, you know, the grown kids going to have a sleepover, spending the night at their grandparents' house.
Yeah.
It was one, and, like, the grandma immediately started crying, and so did I.
Yeah. What was that one movie that me and TJ watched just on a whim one night, and I bawled like a baby back bitch? It's got
Charlotte's Web gets me every time.
Yeah.
And Titanic. I didn't when I was.
I only watched that when I was younger. I haven't watched it as an adult.
I watched it, like, that was the first movie I ever saw in a theater. Was Titanic.
Yeah.
And that was probably why, for the entirety of 3rd grade and part of 4th grade, I was absolutely obsessed. I feel
like it's a thing.
I really think I should be evaluated for autism. But yeah, so I saw that movie in the theater, and it didn't affect me. I saw it again when it was on that double VHS tape.
That's when I remember watching it.
Didn't bother me. I've watched it. I watched it like once or twice, maybe in high school or something. And then, like, as an adult, I watched it once, and, like, when she's, like, letting Jack go when he very well could have fit on that door, I'm sitting there just like,
ugly crying.
Bottom lip quivering and all. But Charlotte's Web, every time.
The first movie I ever saw in theaters was Anastasia, that I can remember.
Oh, I love that movie.
But no, that movie that me and TJ watched one night just on a whim. We were laying in bed and we were like, "Oh, let's watch this movie." It has what's her name that played in Game of Thrones. She was I was like obsessed with Game of Thrones, and I can't even Khaleesi. She was Emilia Clarke.
Yeah.
So she was in it. What is that movie?
Is it the one with the guy in the wheelchair?
Yes. Me Without You? Is that
yes.
it?
Oh my God.
Like a baby back bitch.
Me and our old friend.
Yeah.
Him and I went and saw it in the theaters, and both of us, like, wouldn't look at each other because we're just sitting there crying.
TJ and I decided, because, you know, his birthday is the 30th, mine's the 31st, and we decided on the 30th that we were going to go watch a late movie, so, like, when the movie was over, it would be my birthday.
Yeah.
When we went to go see, just the two of us, we bought a zoo. Listen.
I don't
both
know
of
that I've
us.
ever even heard of that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's got, doesn't it have Marky Mark in it? Mark Wahlberg.
I was like, I don't know who that is. I almost said it.
Also, no, it's got Matt Damon, not Marky Mark. Matt Damon.
Oh, okay.
Girl, that's it. It's gonna make you cry. You want me to give you a spoiler?
Sure.
Okay, so spoiler alert for anyone that's listening. We bought a zoo. It's basically, this guy has kids. He's got, I think, two kids, 3 kids. Anyway, he's got these kids. Mom passes away. So already,
yeah,
you know, we're already like
setting us up for sadness.
Yes. So they go, he's like trying to figure out something to revive them and, you know, whatever. And so they bought this property and it was a zoo. And so he's trying to revive the zoo, and it's such a good movie. Yeah. But like there at the end of the movie, it's like, you know, it starts pulling on those heartstrings.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the theaters. We're both bawling. Bawling. Credits start rolling, and we're just sitting there bawling, refusing to get up to make sure that like nobody sees us crying. Like, we sat there, I think, until the credits were over and the lights came back on, until we got
Nice.
up to make sure that there was no one else in there seeing us both going. I looked at him, I was like, this was the worst idea ever. Anyway, okay. My first one out of Connecticut is Dunellen Hall. This is less about a ghost story and more about spooky coincidences. This is a gorgeous Jacobean mansion housing 21,000 square feet of living space, and it sits on top of a hill overlooking 40 acres of real estate. It was built in 1918 and includes a marble reflecting pool, a 52-foot indoor pool, and apparently a curse to everyone who has called this place home.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with
That style of home looks like straight up like a castle.
yeah. Did I spell this right? Loring Washburn, who was a bigwig in the steel industry. His empire that he had worked to build took a quick southern turn and fell after his purchase of the property in 1950. The property was actually seized in 1963 and sat empty for a few years. In 1966, Greg Sherwood Dodge Moran, a former Greg, keep this in mind because I had to like Google this and make sure that I had the right name. Greg Sherwood Dodge Moran, who was a former showgirl, bought the property, but she sold it to Jack R. Dick, she sold it to him 2 years later. The only thing that I could find that would possibly connect her to the curse is that her ex-husband shot himself in the head a decade later. Now, after Dick had bought the house, he was indicted by a grand jury for some pretty shady financial shit, and then he died in 1974 before his case made it to trial. Next up, we have Ravi Taku. Ravi made his fortune in the oil business. After he bought the house, that money pit went dry and he was forced to sell. This brings us to Harry and Leona Helmsley. They purchased the home in 1983 for $11 million to be used as a summer home. After the purchase and renovations, the Helmsleys found themselves falling victim to the curse. The two found themselves on the bad side of a tax evasion charges and criminal trials. Harry later died, and Leona spent 18 months in the penitentiary. After she was sprung, she moved into the summer house year-round. She died in the house in August of 2007. The house was sold, and I looked into the purchase history or whatever, which was really hard to do, by the way.
Yeah, it's not. It's accessible, but it's not
easily accessible. Because there was conflicting information. Because one website said it was sold on this date for this much, and then one said it was still still available and that it hadn't been sold, and there was differences in between the purchase amount or how much it's up for sale for. It was crazy. The house, what I could tell, the house was sold in October of 2010 for $35 million, but less than a year later, it was put back on the market. From what I can tell, based on this contradictory, confusing information that I found, the property was last sold in 2017. But the sell price I feel like I found wasn't right on the website. Because it was listed in 2014 at $65 million, and then in 2016 at $49 million. That's a big drop.
I don't know, unless parts of it are
deteriorating.
Yeah,
maybe. And then prior to its purchase, it was listed at $39 million. The website that I found tells that it was sold in 2017, says it only sold for $2,425,000. So that's a big drop from 2016 at $39 million to 2017 for $2,425,000.
Yeah, there's got to be something
there's something there
wrong with it.
Yeah. The house itself, though, is absolutely gorgeous, and it makes you feel like you're small. Like, you look at the house and envision yourself being in this house, and you're you feel like tiny.
An ant.
And with our links and stuff that we put, I'm going to include a YouTube video that gives you just a short tour. Absolutely the most gorgeous thing, the inside of this place. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well,
that's it for that one. But yeah, the lady, who was it? Leona Helmsley. Google her real quick. She looked really familiar.
What is it?
Leona Helmsley.
Elna. And
They
this
called
is
her. There was she had a nickname that I didn't include. I thought I did. She was very,
Queen of Mean.
yes, she was very flamboyant. And she was like, people called her a tyrant.
I mean, I could see it looking at her.
Yeah, but she looks really familiar to me. Not like I know her personally, but she was 87 years old when she died.
Yeah. Hmm. I don't know. She does look really familiar. Oh, her husband looks a lot older than her. Wow.
All right, you're next.
Let me get my shit back open. What?
Is he having a rave out there?
I have no idea what he's doing.
The lights were flashing.
There ain't no telling.
He's got a flashlight or some shit shining at the floor, I'm sure.
Are we surprised? He's got flashlights hidden all over this house.
I feel like we're about to start hearing.
My next one is Barahack Village. Around 1790, Obadiah Higginbotham and Jonathan Randall relocated their families from Cranston, Rhode Island, to this unsettled forest outpost in Pomfret. The two men shared a Welsh heritage and so named their settlement Barahack, which translated from Welsh means breaking of bread.
I'm glad you clarified that because I'm looking at their names thinking, how did we get that?
Higginbotham and Randall opened Higginbotham Linen Wheels, which was a company that supplied flax spinning to residents in surrounding areas. Eventually, the little settlement evolved into a small village that included a water wheel and a mill, which sat along Nightingale Brook. That sounds so picturesque. And family homes, slave quarters, and a community graveyard. The Randall family slaves would tell of tales of a ghost baby who would often be seen reclining in a nearby tree. The village of Barahack didn't flourish for long, though, and economic hardships and the death of the founding families drove the remaining residents out. It was said that it was abandoned by the time of the Civil War, but it was definitely abandoned by the turn of the 20th century. Quickly, the site developed a reputation among amateur paranormal investigators, and there were reported sightings of the tree baby ghost, as well as a bearded face in the cemetery, streaking lights, and orbs. Noises have also been reported, which included the sounds of farm animals, horse-drawn buggies, and disembodied whispers. Today, the remnants of Barahack sit on private property after being closed to the public due to the influx of paranormal enthusiasts, many of whom I can assume weren't respectful of the area, otherwise it probably wouldn't have been closed. And that's that one.
The reclining baby ghost.
Yeah, I like that. I just imagine, I don't know why, I can just picture like a little white little ghost, just little baby, just like, wee, wee, and just like chilling in a tree. If I was a ghost, I would not want to hang out in a tree.
No. So my next one is kind of like it's a little abandoned town too. And this story, I was into it. I did some deep dive on this one. It's Dudleytown. So I'm keeping with the cursed theme. There's a small village in Connecticut, and that at its peak housed only 26 families. Bad luck ran rampant around this town, beginning with its start in 1747. There were reports of suicide, murder, bouts of insanity, and mysterious creatures in the night. It was questioned whether its location, being surrounded by the dark and dreary forest, drove residents to madness, or if the land itself was actually cursed. The very land it sits on was once used as a burial site for the Mohawk Native Indians. Now, in case you're in search of this area, Dudleytown is not an official town. It's part of the Cornwall Township near the border of upstate New York. The terrain is not very forgiving as it is mountainous, covered in dense forests, and the soil is very rocky. Two men by the names of Thomas Griffiths and Gideon Dudley saw this land and didn't see any of this as a problem. Griffiths bought the land in 1738 from Yale College at an auction. They called the land the Mast Swamp, as the trees in this swampy area were cut down and the wood was sent to build ship masts. 9 years after the purchase, Griffiths sold a parcel of this land to Gideon Dudley and his family. This is where the fun stuff begins. It was said that Dudley's family was carrying with them a curse that found its roots in the 16th century England, as Edmund Dudley, Gideon's ancestor, found himself on the wrong end of a guillotine as he was exposed in a coup against King Henry VIII, which, as I'm reading this,
it's always got something to do with King Henry VIII.
Right. As I was reading this, I saw the word coup, and I was like, what is that word? Because it's spelled coup.
Yeah.
And so I had to, I Googled it, and I was like, oh, so I had to put in parentheses KOO so that I would know what that was. It was said then that a curse was placed on his family. His son, John, and grandson, Guilford, were later executed as well. This was because Guilford was supposed to have married Lady Jane Grey, who served as queen for a short time and was overthrown. This resulted in the three of them being executed. Misfortune trickled down the line throughout time, rather. So then now we go back to Gideon. As the men developed the town, the curse began to show its ugly face. The location was nestled between three large hills, meaning that even when the sun was at its highest, it was pretty dark in the area still. The small farming community failed almost as soon as it started. The winters were wicked. Again, the rocky soil was not suitable for most crops. Therefore, they turned to the only logical thing they could think of. They made timber. Oh, I lost my spot. They made timber the main source of income. In 1854, the town was home to 26 families, and these families had to deal with some unspeakable things. Nathaniel Carter, who was a resident of the town in 1759. What? That makes no sense. Why? Hold on.
Don't you love it when we do that?
Right. Okay. Who had been a resident of the town since 1759. In 1764, he fell as one of the first victims of the curse. Or maybe he was resident of the town from 1759 to 1764. I don't know. He had gone on a business trip, leaving his wife and baby behind. Upon his return, he found that his family had been murdered by Native Americans. Shortly after that, he moved back home to New York. However, he was murdered soon after his move home. Abiel Dudley, who was one of the original owners of the property here and was also Gideon's brother, suffered from dementia and insanity in his older years. He died at age 90 in the town. Abiel's friend Gershon Hollister died there while building a barn for his friend William Tanner in 1792, and he fell. Tanner went insane and later told tales of a strange animal from the forest that was responsible for killing Hollister. Claims like this of these strange creatures, even demons, were common there. Sarah Fay One was struck by lightning in her own front yard in 1804. Her husband, who was a Revolutionary War hero, Jesus,
it's contagious.
Yeah, General Herman Swift went mad because of it, and possibly the most well-known story to have come out of this town was the story of Mary Cheney, wife of presidential nominee Horace Greeley. Mary Cheney unalived herself just a short week before the 1872 election where Ulysses S. Grant won the presidency, beating out Greeley. The curse was blamed for both the election and Mary's death. Now, you may be thinking, how can this get any worse?
Mm-hmm.
It does. The curse continued on into the 20th century. In fact, one of the weirdest cases happened in the 20th century was John Patrick Brophy. He was one of the town's final residents. The town itself had dwindled down due to the poor soil and the failing economy. Brophy's wife died of consumption or tuberculosis. Then his 2 kids wandered off into the woods and were never seen again. His home later burned down. One more, and then his home later burned down. And then another curse or case that was blamed on the curse. Excuse me. Dr. William Clark was a leading expert in cancer at the time, purchased a property in Dudleytown in 1900. This was used as his holiday home for him and his wife. Summer of 1918, the couple were staying there when Clark had to leave for a couple days for business. When he returned, his wife was absolutely hysterical. She said that she had seen strange creatures in the woods. Shortly after, she unalived herself, and then Clark later remarried and continued to live in the area until his death in 1943. First of all, if my wife went crazy saying that she was seeing things in the woods and then unalived herself, I wouldn't stay there.
No, I'd be like, you know what? Maybe I should move.
Right. But while he was still staying there, he helped start the Dark Entry Forest Association, which helps save the area and the forest surrounding it to this day. Now, in present day, the area is private property and heavily watched, but to those who dare, and we're not telling you to go there, there have been reports of seeing creatures in the woods, shadows. Some have even been overwhelmed by the feeling of sadness and feeling of being watched, and have even said they feel like they were being suffocated.
No, thank you.
Yep, I'm good.
I'll stay home.
I'm good.
Was that it for that?
That was it.
All right.
I feel like I struggled through that whole thing.
I don't know. I think the I don't know what you want to call it. It's like my tongue's too big and I can't get words out. First opened in 1867 as the Union Metallic Cartridge Company, Remington Arms purchased the property in 1915 and expanded into a 73-acre manufacturing plant. During the early 20th century, Remington Arms was one of America's biggest munitions companies that employed over 15,000 people and produced tons of munitions every year. Anyone who has worked in a factory knows accidents are a common occurrence, particularly back in those days, and deaths were also not uncommon. 2 employees fell into a giant vat of molten metal, ammunition inadvertently going off and killing employees, and in 1942, several employees were killed in an explosion. The explosion occurred at the height of wartime efforts and right on the production floor. In all, 80 employees were injured and 7 died. The plant was closed in the 1980s after one too many fatal accidents, and the building was eventually totally abandoned in 2007. It has been reported that there are shadowy figures seen on the factory floor, and it is believed that they are the spirits of the employees who died in that explosion. Some have reported hearing the sounds of weapon factory work, talking voices, and yelling within the building. Others have reported seeing floating orbs of light. Additionally, the putrid smell of charred, burning flesh has been reported, along with disembodied screams and encounters with misty apparitions.
Mm-mm.
You want to go? You want to go?
A little bit, but no.
Only if I can wear, what do you call them, like a nose plug? Like what swimmers wear? Just in case.
One of those. No, what you get is like a. You've got one.
One of the Vicks inhalers.
No.
Oh, let's say
You just gonna stick a Vicks inhaler in your nose and just
absolutely,
constantly have it in there
absolutely,
like a tampon?
yes. I walk around with 2 little Vicks tampons sticking out my nose.
No, I was thinking the plague doctor masks and stick
Oh
like
yeah, I got a
herbs and
couple of
stuff up in
those.
there. You know that's what they use that for. Like why they were
Yeah,
shaped like that because they'd stick herbs up in the nose part of
yeah.
it so they wouldn't smell anything. Okay, so this next one, being the animal lover that I am, says the person that apparently whose dog had an upset belly today and decided to shit in the house not once but twice within an hour. And gagged every time she had to clean it up. Um I found this story to be kind of not cute. Kind of cute, but not cute, kind of scary. This is the Black Dog of West Peak State Park. This popular hiking area is home to beautiful scenery, rocky peaks created by ancient lava flow, and a century-old castle called Castle Craig. But it's not what we have, that's not what we've come here to talk about today. Hikers can also see a supernatural dog.
Mhm.
Several encounters have been reported of a small, spaniel-like, short-haired black dog. It sometimes comes out of nowhere, but is always super happy to meet a human and give it all the lovin's. Can you just imagine?
It's giving Sirius Black.
Yeah. I had to think about that for a second. Like I would be, we'd be hiking along, and I'd be like, "Oh, a puppy!" And then the minute it started wagging its little tail, I'd be like, "Oh, come here, we about to roll around on the ground," because that's just me. It leaves behind no footprints and makes no sound when it barks. However, legend says if you see it once, it's joyful. If you see it twice, it's a warning. But if you see it a third time, you're gonna die.
Oh,
Stories of people dying after seeing the dog a third time date back as far as the 19th century, where 2 geologists were doing research in the area. One of the geologists had only seen the dog once, but the other had been on previous trips and seen the dog twice. One day, the two had gone together, and then the dog appeared on a hill not far away from the two. Shortly after that, the geologist that had already seen it twice slipped off a hill and disappeared. Several years later, the geologist who survived and went back had gone back again, but never returned. His body was later found in the same spot as the first one's.
oh.
There are even reports as recent as the 1970s on this
Mm-mm.
story.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, my ass would be like, "Come here and let me love you, you little spooky thing." I love a dog. I just like all the animals.
Yeah, we did see a dog at Walmart last night. It was really cute. It was a little, I
Like
want to
outside
say,
or in
no,
the
it was in the
store?
store. People had it in their little buggy. They put a blanket down, so at least there was that.
First of all, I mean,
But
I hear
it does
you,
say on the door not to do that.
unless it's a service animal.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't. But it was a little cutie.
I mean, I'm all about taking my dog places, but
Yeah, but it was a little cutie, and we pet it over in the cheese aisle.
in the cheese aisle.
She was real cute.
Aw.
I think it was a she. I'm pretty sure it was a she. She was like looking at us, and she's like, "If one of y'all don't pet me now, I'm gonna lose my shit." The Fairfield State Hospital, later named Fairfield Hills Hospital, opened in June of 1931 to great fanfare. Oh, I bumped my mic. On June 1st, 1932, patients were transferred there from the Connecticut State Hospital in Middletown. Shortly after, more busloads of patients would arrive as it relieved overcrowding in more institutions. According to the Newtown Bee, a busload of 500 arrived on June 23rd, 1933. The hospital had 16 buildings in total on 670 acres of land, which mostly consisted of forest and large meadows. Initially, there were 3 doctors to approximately 500 patients, but by the late 1960s, the number of patients grew to 4,000, and staff included 50 nurses, 20 doctors, and 100 other employees.
I still don't know that that's enough.
Right. The hospital would remain a source of pride for the town as it provided hundreds of locals with jobs over the course of 60 years, until the hospital was closed on December 8, 1995, and the remaining patients were transferred to Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middleton. Overall, many people who were employed at the hospital claimed that it was a positive experience. from maintenance level employees to professional staff. This is despite the rumors that inhumane treatments were used on patients over the years, such as psychosurgery, hydrotherapy, which most likely was an ice bath, electroshock therapy, and unauthorized frontal lobotomies. There are also rumors of several suicides and mysterious deaths that allegedly occurred on the hospital grounds. Tales of cruelty and abuse were rampant during the hospital's operation. However, all employee testimonials I read did not make it seem as though these rumors have much truth to them. Since the closing of the hospital, it has gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted locations in the state of Connecticut, with visitors reporting disembodied voices that are presumed to be former patients screaming out in agony while being treated. There have also been reports of apparitions dressed in white, which are believed to be both former staff and patients at the hospital. Some paranormal investigators have claimed to see a young, glowing girl in the window of one of the buildings. For one of the most haunted locations in Connecticut, there really isn't a whole lot online about the ghosts that are supposed to be haunting this property. But if you are in the area, the property is now owned by the city of Newtown, and some of the buildings are in use today. The property is open to the public, but the abandoned buildings are fenced off and off limits.
Sorry, I got distracted.
That's what
I don't know what part of that story made me remember, but we're going to get off topic for a second.
We've done that this entire episode.
Listen. Did you see where there out in the state of Alabama there was a execution by nitrogen gas?
No.
Like, I feel like it was recently. Hold on. Yeah. In Atmore, Alabama. The first American execution using nitrogen gas, I think it was this past Thursday.
Oh.
Yeah, this was posted 2 days ago.
I had no idea.
Yep. It was a convicted murderer whose jury had voted to spare his life and opening a new frontier on how states execute death row prisoners. The execution of the condemned prisoner, Kenneth Smith. Am I having a stroke?
Maybe.
Kenneth Smith, 58, began at 7:53 p.m. Central Time, and he was pronounced dead at 8:25. That's 30 minutes.
Yeah, that seems...
In an execution chamber in Atmore.
That seems like an awful long time to wait to die.
The Supreme Court allowed the execution to move forward over the objections of its 3 liberal justices and concerns from death penalty opponents who said that the untested method could cause Smith to suffer.
I'm sure it did. And I would since it took 30 minutes, very seriously doubt it will be used again.
Okay, so he was strapped to a gurney with a mask, appeared conscious for several minutes after the gas started. He shook and writhed for at least 2 minutes before beginning to breathe heavily for several minutes. His breathing slowed until it was no longer apparent. It looked like he had tried to hold his breath as long as he could. He said that his body movements were nothing out of the ordinary from what they were expecting. He's one of the 3 men convicted in 1988 murder of a woman whose husband, a pastor, had recruited them to kill her.
Oh, no.
It was the second time that the state of Alabama had tried to kill him after a failed lethal injection in November of 22.
Oh.
They couldn't find a suitable vein before his death warrant expired.
Well, yeah, that seems like an awful long time. I would not be surprised if he's the first and only. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Well, hold on. Nitrogen hypoxia is a method known, as the method is known, is used in some assisted suicides in Europe and elsewhere. Though the precise method that Alabama used differs from the common practice. They say it's painless and with unconsciousness occurring in a matter of seconds, followed by the stopping of the heart. Anyway, I just remembered that and I thought I'd share. I felt like
Thank
something
you.
we might, might be something we'd talk about here. Anyway, my next story has nothing to do with nitrogen gas or executions. It is the Ledge Lighthouse. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this lighthouse looks like, and if we remember to do so, we will post a picture of it on our socials when this episode airs. Um, but you should definitely Google this lighthouse because it's gorgeous. It's different than what you're expecting it to look like. This lighthouse is a rather unique one as far as looks goes. It sits atop a concrete pier with a light sitting on top of a striking 3-story building. It's off the west coast of New London, Connecticut. It is most commonly named the New London Light or the New London Lighthouse, but is officially the London Ledge Light. It was built in 1909 on the Thames River at the mouth of the New London Harbor and was automated in 1987. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1990. It's seen its share of keepers, but until the U.S. Coast Guard took over in 1939, it saw its share of keepers until the U.S. Coast Guard took it over in 1939. But there is one keeper by the name of Ernie that seems to still hang out even though his watch has officially ended. He has been reported to turn off the lights, TVs, opening and closing doors, and yanking blankets off of beds, moving cups around, unmooring boats, spontaneous foghorn blowing. Can you imagine just like sitting there and all of a sudden the foghorn goes off for no reason? I'd shit my pants.
Yeah, I would be gone.
I'd shit my pants.
But also too, are all lighthouses haunted?
It seems so.
Yeah.
It seems so. He is also known to be responsible for random and unexplained noises in the night. It has been said that he has been seen time to time, as keepers, most keepers have all seen that they've seen a tall bearded man in a slicker and a rain hat hanging around. Now, how
also seems scary.
Right. It gives it vibes.
Yeah. Or I Know What You Did Last Summer.
So how did Ernie come to be eternally stuck here? It's said that he had a disagreement with his lover. She had run off with the local ferry captain. He found himself to be so distraught that he cut his own throat with a fishing knife and plunged himself from the top of the tower. There are no records to confirm this story, but per some articles that I read, psychics have gone there and they say that that's how that happened.
Oh.
I don't know that they would put that in an official report anyway.
I mean, I'm sure that it would be somewhere, but it probably wasn't like reported to the public right away. Moving right along. Formerly known as the Curtis House Restaurant and Inn, the 1754 house is not only the oldest inn in Connecticut, but it is consistently ranked as being one of America's most haunted inns.
I'm in already. I'm in it.
You're in the inn?
I'm in the inn because it's a house and restaurant. Let's go spend the night and get some food.
The inn was built in 1736 by Anthony Stoddard, who began accepting guests in 1754. With as long of a history as the building has had, it is bound to have at least a ghost or two. The hotel was featured on Hotel Hell when it was still called the Curtis House Inn, and after reviewing the synopsis for this episode, the owners sucked and didn't talk to each other, and the food in the restaurant was absolute garbage. The hotel was redone for the episode, and the restaurant was revamped. It was successful for some time, but it was sold in September 2018, and it was closed for renovations in April of 2019. It became the Evergreen Inn and Tavern in June 2019, but was sold again and reopened as the 1754 house. And from their website, it doesn't look like they're embracing their haunted history. On the episode of Hotel Hell, Gordon Ramsay brought in a paranormal investigator to corroborate the centuries of claims that the hotel was haunted, and the hotel was given an official plaque joining the Haunted Connecticut tour. It could just be that maintenance needed to be done, but there were several instances within the episode where Gordon got stuck in various places because the doors wouldn't open for him.
I can see it now.
Yeah.
Him cussing and whatnot.
Over the years, yeah. Over the years, many paranormal experts have visited and claimed that it is very haunted. One of those being famed communicator of spirits, Lorraine Warren, which I think I've probably mentioned this before, but if I haven't and you're new here, I'm a hater.
She's the one with the bump, right?
Well, they're the ones. So I think the Warrens are total frauds.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
No, who am I thinking of?
I don't know who you're talking
about. The Long Island. Is it Long Island? Hold on.
Oh, with the big yellow hair?
Yes.
I love her. Teresa Caputo.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I don't know how legit she is, but I do like her personality.
Her voice gets on my nerves.
But anyway, so I think the Warrens are total frauds. And like I said, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nothing happened at the Amityville house, and those two meat sacks just made up the whole thing for money.
Meat sacks.
Of the house, Lorraine said, I have been aware of the haunting of the Curtis house for a very long time. My husband and family have gone there. There is a bedroom upstairs, that first bedroom. That room always seems to be very active. Sometimes when people come here from out of state for visits, I always ask them if they want to stay at a real haunted inn. The drama. There are a number of spirits that are said to haunt the inn, some dating back to over 200 years ago. If you book a visit, you could come into contact with a male entity that is described as wearing 17th and 18th century clothing. This man is thought to be the entity of a former owner who was upset when the pub was being constructed and would often do his best to annoy and bother the workmen. He left folks feeling as though he did not want any changes made to the building. The first owner of the inn, Anthony Stoddard, is thought to have never left either, or he was brought back into the inn after a Stoddard family descendant gave them a portrait of Anthony, which was hung in the foyer. The painting seemed to be watching and supervising employees and he was not thrilled with what he witnessed. It was well known that Anthony Stoddard had very high standards, and perhaps he came across as a bit too strong of a force in an effort to help the current living owners. Employees would often report feeling uncomfortable as they would feel the unseen presence radiating from the eyes of the painting. After complaints, the owner moved the painting to the dining room and gave it a whole wall to itself. After it was moved, employees no longer reported the feelings of being over-supervised, and the paranormal activity associated with the painting lessened. There is also the spirit of a Confederate soldier that is said to hang around the pub room, where he became very active after its opening. It is thought that his spirit will stay in the liquor closet when he wants some privacy.
Same.
Along with another spirit, the soldier is thought to spend some of his time in room 1. Some have attributed the sounds of loud boot thumping and a disembodied voice to the seemingly elegant soldier. A guest once reported feeling bowled over by the presence of a very strong, unseen force. In 1857, then-owner Lucius Foote died under suspicious circumstances after winning a large sum of money at a high-stakes poker game in the inn. For reasons unknown, after he won the game, Lucius left with his winnings and decided to take a shortcut through the church graveyard. Also, fun fact I learned like 2 weeks ago. So if a cemetery is connected to a church, it's called a graveyard. If it's not connected to a church, it's a cemetery.
I feel like I knew that.
I probably did somewhere in the recesses of my brain, but
they're all body gardens.
Yeah. Later, Lucius was found dead and frozen in the church work barn and was without his fortune. It is thought that he still hangs around the grounds of the inn to offer help, as do other former owners. Lucius is said to spend much of his time in room 1, which is thought to have been the innkeeper's quarters during his time as owner. After guests settle in for the night, in room 1, a male apparition, which is thought to be that of Lucius, has been known to stomp in, take his boots off, and proclaim, "I've had a tough ride." Once a psychic was laying in room 1 when a male entity entered the room. The psychic claimed it was Lucius. She said that he entered the room, dropped his boots, and then crawled into bed with her. She did say that she moved over for him.
I'd have been like, get out.
Yeah, I'd have been like, are you paying for this room? Get out. In the attic, investigators have reported having their hair pulled on and have recorded orbs and disembodied voices. People who have stayed in room 5 report hearing voices and footsteps above their room. And if I'm not mistaken, there is nothing above room 5. If I remember reading that correctly. There is a young female entity that is known as Sally who hangs out on the 2nd floor, particularly in room 16. Female guests have had the covers pulled off of them or moved, and one guest reported being shoved out of the bed. Male guests have reported receiving special attention from Sally, who tucks them into bed, messes with their covers, and has even been known to crawl into bed with them once in a while. There is another female presence that is described as being strong and matronly. A young female employee reported feeling overwhelmed by a catering event, and she felt a calm, reassuring presence of a woman who is often found to be supervising large events and being a source of emotional support for the frazzled living employees. After a large dinner, a guest who was a psychic medium told the owner that the matronly female spirit was very pleased with how the dinner had gone. Joe Hardesty died in 1985. He was employed as a dishwasher and would help with other chores around the inn. Joe's apparition has been seen by staff in the basement and describe him as sitting and eating his usual plate of potatoes. The brother-in-law of one of the owners during its time as the Curtis house has been felt by grieving family members. He has also made appearances in their dreams where he is trying to comfort them. There is also talk of an unseen presence in room 23 that will simply stand over guests. And that was the only detail I got about that one. And that is me done.
Well, that was a good one.
I feel like I can smell that chicken pot pie.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Me too. I'm kind of hungry. I got the nonprofit.
Oh, yeah.
You ready for it?
Yep.
So, as I do a lot of times when we do these spooky states, I try to find a nonprofit based out of the state that we're talking about. And I found this one, and it's kind of sad, but I like it. I think it's a good organization to consider. This is the Sandy Hook Promise. So as we know, there was like a mass shooting at the Sandy Hook
elementary school.
Sandy Hook Promise is a national nonprofit organization founded and led by several family members whose loved ones were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012. I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, I was going to say it. That feels like forever ago.
Based in Newtown, Connecticut, our intent is to honor all victims of gun violence by turning our tragedy into a moment of transformation, by empowering youth to know the signs and uniting all people who value the protection of children. We can take meaningful actions in schools, homes, and communities to prevent gun violence and stop the tragic loss of life. So their mission statement basically is to educate and empower youth and adults to prevent violence in schools, homes, and communities. Through our proven evidence-informed Know the Signs program and sensible bipartisan school and gun safety legislation, we teach young people and adults to recognize, intervene, and get help for individuals who may be socially isolated and or at risk for hurting themselves or others. So, as always, we will include a link for you guys to donate One of the co-founders of this organization is actually the father of one of the kids that was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary. Um, then another one was one of the moms of another little boy. But basically, I think I'd like to see when someone has gone through such a tragedy that they turn it around and use it
for good.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good one.
Yeah. I like it.
That situation, being a mom, scares the absolute shit out of me.
That does seem very scary.
It never really, like, I heard about it happening, especially like with Sandy Hook, and like there's been a couple others. I hear about it happening, and it never really occurs to me that it's a possibility until that one happened at the school here in Nashville.
Yeah.
And then that hit home.
Yeah.
It's quite scary. And then it dawned on me, beginning of the school year, I bought Easton a pair of like highlighter yellow shoes with lights on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a button that turns the lights off. And I'm like, why would you need that? And then it occurred to me.
Yeah. That's sad that we even have to think about that.
Oh, I definitely texted his teacher and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, I bought him these shoes, and in the event that it needs to be known, there's a button on the side of his shoes that turns those lights off so that, he doesn't set off any alarms.
Right. Well, I think that was a good one.
I like it.
Follow us on the Instagram,
the TikTok,
X,
Facebook.
Email us,
wanderersofweird
@gmail.com.
Oh, yeah.
And we will see you next week.
Come join us next week. Next week is also Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
So, be excited.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, bye.